All right, welcome to Oxfam Canada's online webinar about the Behind the Brands campaign, which is the newest campaign action within Oxfam Canada's Grow campaign. So this online tutorial is going to take us through a little bit of background on where the campaign came from, what the elements of the Behind the Brands campaign are, and how the campaign is constructed to allow you to take action on issues that are relevant to food security and women's rights. So we're also going to take a little bit of time today to explore our interactive online interface so that you can get an understanding of how it can best be used to help you campaign to encourage the 10 biggest food and beverage companies to make change within their policies. So the world's 10 biggest food giants make over $1 billion a day, but no brand is too big to listen to its customers. That's what this campaign, Behind the Brands, is all about. This is the start of a journey to leverage the power imbalance between food companies and their customers, bringing customers on board to use the power they have so that companies start to play their part in creating a world where everyone has enough to eat. Oxfam's Behind the Brand campaign aims to provide people who buy and enjoy these products with the information they need to hold the big 10 companies to account for what happens in their supply chains. In putting together a scorecard, which is the key element of the Behind the Brands campaign, it's based entirely on publicly available information on company policies. So through the creation of this campaign and through this scorecard, we pose the question, what are companies doing to clean up their supply chains? So this campaign is not about boycotts, but is about leveraging consumer power in ways we know that companies are responsive to. Companies listen to their consumer base. They want to do well in the eyes of the people purchasing their products, and we need everyone out there who buys anything that is a part of the world's 10 biggest food and beverage companies to tell them how they can do better within their policies. In today's world, companies are increasingly listening online, so social media and using online tools to engage companies and to show them how we want them to make change is a big part of how this campaign is set up. So this campaign digs into the world's biggest food and beverage companies by looking specifically at their brands. So the big company names, the 10 big companies that are part of Behind the Brands and are a part of the scorecard, are Unilever, Nestle, Coke, Pepsi, Mars, Danone, Mondelez, General Mills, Kellogg's, and Associated British Foods. So we based our selection of companies on their overall revenues globally, as well as their position in the Forbes 2000 annual ranking, which measures companies on the basis of composite sales, assets, profit, and market value. So you may not recognize all of these companies' names, but you'll definitely know their brands. We know that people are going to come to this campaign not through the big 10 company names, but through the brands that they buy, through the things that they're familiar with seeing on the grocery store shelves. People feel strongly about brands that are a part of their lives, and what we want to do is connect people and the products that they buy with the policies that need to be changed within each of these companies. So as you can see, this interface shows you a way to select a brand. So when you come into the website, people will actually be able to see the names of the products that they're familiar with and to find out which company that product is a part of and then where that company scores on the ranking of Oxfam's issues. So let's take a look specifically at the scorecard, which is the cornerstone of the campaign. So the scorecard assesses the agricultural sourcing policies of the world's 10 largest food and beverage companies. It focuses on publicly available information that relates to the policies of these companies on their sourcing of agricultural commodities from developing countries. So the scorecard looks at 7 themes, weighing each theme equally. The 7 themes are land, women, farmers, workers, climate, transparency, and water. So if you take a look at the scorecard here, you can see the listing of all of the issues along the top of the scorecard, and you can see the listing of the companies down the left-hand side. So the way that the scorecard works is that each issue is given a score. So for example, we can say that Nestle here, the #1 listed company, has ranked a level of 3 on the issue of land. So 3 is within the category of poor. So their policy construction currently around land and land rights and access to land and sustainable use of land, it could be doing a lot better than it is. So our aim is to encourage the level of this policy to grow throughout the course of the campaign. So you can also see for each company there's a composite score, which is a total percentage based on their scoring on all of the issues within the campaign. So if we want to learn a little bit more about what each of these issues are. So for example, the issue of land is focusing on policies around land rights, access to land, and the sustainable use of land. The theme of women is focusing on women farm workers and women small-scale producers within the supply chain. So looking at what rights, entitlement, and access to resources these women have and how that relates to the same rights and access and resources that men within that system are provided. When we take a look at farmers, we're looking at small-scale growing and the commodities that these farmers grow. Now this is different from workers, where we're taking a look at the working conditions and the rights of the workers within the supply chain. So the farmers are the owner-producers of the food, and the workers are the laborers that are a part of that same farm system. So we're also looking at climate, both relating to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and helping farmers to adapt to climate change. We're looking at transparency at the corporate level, so understanding how these companies are producing and sharing information and what kinds of information they're not producing today. And then we're looking at water, which is both the issue of rights and access to water resources and the sustainable use of resources, water resources. So the water issue is very similar to the land issue in terms of the questions that we're asking. So you can see so far by taking a look at this scorecard that the highest ranking issue or highest ranking company so far is Nestle with the score of 54, and then the lowest ranking company is the Associated British Foods with a score percentage of 19. So the scorecard itself, this thing that we're taking a look at now, which is a big feature of the campaign, it provides an overall view of how companies are doing across the board on all issues in relation to one another. So the idea is to continue to update this scorecard on an ongoing basis. And we are sharing this with companies as it's being changed and updated. And the reason that we're doing this is because as companies see the movement of other companies towards the top, aiming to be the strongest ranking company, then this will help encourage them to make movement on these policies so that they can move towards the top of the scorecard as well. So our aim is to engage companies in a race to the top and to have them improve their policies and practice on these issues because consumers are demanding it of them, but also because they can see the other companies, their direct competitors, moving forward on some of these issues. So now let's take a look at how the scores on these specific issues were calculated. So under each theme, so for example under the theme of land, this issue was broken down into a series of indicators and sub-indicators. So each indicator was weighted equally within each theme, and each sub-indicator was weighted equally within each indicator. There was a very rigorous mathematical methodology around how the scores were calculated, and once we go onto the website, I'll show you where you can download all of the information about the questions that were asked and the policies that were examined in order to create these scores. So this means that every question asked to a company was given equal weight and consideration. The scores are a total sum of all issues, and one issue does not affect the score more than others. So one of the questions that we've commonly been getting with this campaign is, does the issue of land contribute more to the company's scoring than the issue of transparency, for example? And the response to that is no, that all of the issues are weighted equally and all of the questions within each of the issues are weighted equally. So the scorecard is focused on the agricultural sourcing operations of these companies. So the scores don't relate to upstream activities, so things like issues of nutrition or the actual assessment of on-the-ground activities by these companies or the farms that are sourced from these companies, or the farms that these companies are sourcing from, rather. And so mainly the reason why some of these issues aren't covered or aren't looked at in depth is one of two reasons. Otherwise, because an issue, for example, nutrition, is being covered adequately by another organization or initiative, and we felt that there was a strong campaign around encouraging these 10 companies to be working on that issue. And so we didn't feel the need to to try and cover that issue as well because it's already being done well by another organization or initiative, or because the information wasn't available to make an accurate assessment of a company's scoring on a specific issue. So the way that the scores were calculated is after all of the research and the initial drafting of the report, Oxfam engaged these companies. So we shared this information with them, and over a period of 6 months, we asked them so that we could obtain additional information to help bolster and ensure that we had all of the background that we needed to fairly and accurately assess them. So after recreating the scorecard a number of times based on more information we were given, we gave companies 2 opportunities to review the information that we had and collected and our assessment of it in terms of the way the scorecard was framed. So all 10 of these companies have voluntarily collaborated with us in this process. So they're aware of the research that we've been doing, they're aware of our analysis of their policies on these issues, and they're aware of the fact that these 10 companies are together being compared to one another in terms of their ranking. And so this is part of our strategy, right? Because we're hoping that this is engaging these companies in a conversation with the public, but also within each other in terms of how the policy development process is working. So going back to how the specific scores on different issues were created, so the indicators are grouped in 4 categories. So each one is worth a quarter of the score available for that theme. So basically there are 4 kinds of questions that we asked about an issue. So we asked questions around awareness, we asked questions around a company's knowledge of an issue, their awareness of an issue, we asked questions about a company's commitment to the issue, and about their supply chain management on the issue. So awareness, do they demonstrate an awareness of the issue and how it connects to their role as a food and beverage company? And are they conducting any projects to understand or address that issue more? In terms of knowledge, we're asking if the company can demonstrate that it measures or assesses or reports on issues in relation to the supply chain. So for the example of land, are they aware of the impact of their supply chain on land usage, on land rights within the communities where they're operating? If we look at commitments, does a company commit to addressing key issues relating to that theme? So does a company have a policy around their commitment towards sustainable land usage, for example? Within supply chain management, does the company require its suppliers to meet relevant standards or criteria related to that theme? So on the website, we're able to look at a downloadable PDF which outlines the methodology of how these scores are composed, as well as being able to access the open data sheets that lead to the composite scoring for each of the issues. So this slide provides the 2 types of overviews, so the general and the in-depth information on how a company ranks on a certain score. So the top view we have here is looking at the company of Nestle on the issue of land. So you can see in the top left corner they have a score of 3. So that's their overall rating on a scale of 1 to 10 on their scoring on the issue of land. And there's a quick summary that says, Nestle agrees to negotiate with communities over land, but shows no understanding of how changes in land use affect people and the planet. Generally unimpressive. And then it allows you to go and see how that same company scores on other issues. Below it, there's a bit of a snapshot to give you a preview of what the open data sheet looks like. So this allows you to get all of the background information of the questions that were asked in order to determine that score number of 3, as well as all of the relevant policies that were cited in the construction of that score. So the idea of the scorecard is that it's a tool to understand the general stance of companies on certain issues, and the website allows you to sort of see that at a superficial level and compare that with other companies, as well as to look in depth at one specific issue and all of the questions and policies surrounding that. So the idea is that this website is a hub or a source of information, but also that it translates that information into action. So let's hop onto the website and see what we can do with it. So here we are on the home page of the website. And what this does is it allows you to enter into the website in 2 different ways. So it allows you to go directly into looking at a brand and seeing how this is connected to these top 10 food and beverage companies. And that's the select a brand option on the right. Or to scroll down and to see what's this campaign all about. I've just wound up on this website. I'm not really sure. All I know is that we're talking about changing the way that food companies do business in this world. What does that mean? So let's take a scroll through the what about. So that comes down and it gives you a quick overview of the campaign, what it is we're trying to achieve, what kind of research we've done, and why we're targeting the biggest food companies in the world, and how we think that that can have an influence on producers and the planet. And it concludes by saying a really important thing, which is that you can make a difference. So this whole campaign is based on the concept of consumer power and the ability for the people who purchase the products of these 10 food and beverage companies to influence what they're doing policy-wise. So if we move into selecting a brand, this is the interface that I was showing you earlier, where it allows you to click onto a brand and to get an understanding of how that brand is faring in terms of its policies. So let's go in through Lay's potato chips. So Lay's is owned by PepsiCo, so let's go ahead and see how they score. So PepsiCo has an overall score of 31%, which is poor. And so the immediate thing it shows you what to do on the top right hand of the website is to say, well, that's not great. I want to take action on this. So before we go in and take a look at that, I'm just going to scroll down so you can see a little bit more information on PepsiCo and its scoring. So basically, once you get onto a specific company's webpage, so this shows you here is a brand, Lay's, in the top left-hand corner. And here is the company that it's owned by. Here's its total score. And so the idea is, once you have this information, you can take a look at how this same company fares on other issues. So by moving down the page, you can see the total scores. So 8 to 10 being a good score, 6 to 10 being fair, 4 to 5 being made some progress, and 2 to 3 being a poor score. You can see how a company scores on each of the issues within the campaign. So we have land, women, farmers, workers, climate, transparency, and water. So these are listed in the lowest to highest score. So you can see if we drop down on land, it gives you an overall assessment. This is the feature that I was showing you earlier in the slides. The soft drink giant lacks fizz on land issues. PepsiCo doesn't recognize the value of community land ownership, but does push suppliers to protect the planet. So this indicates that PepsiCo has some sense of environmental stewardship that's possibly embedded into their policies, but they don't have any specific policies around land ownership. So one thing you can do once you take a look on an issue and you see that a company is not faring well in it, you can make a change right away. So by doing this, you just scroll down and it allows you to create an infographic that you can share on Twitter, on Facebook, on Pinterest, or that you can download and email to people that you know to share information about this company's stance on this issue. And so this exists for all of the different issues. So for example, you can go down to water, and it allows you to do the exact same thing. Or perhaps you're interested in the climate change issue, and so you can make a change by sharing one of these infographics on this issue. So there's two different kinds of infographics. Let's take a look at another company for a second here. If we go into Special K, which is owned by Kellogg's. They're not ranking high enough. I need to give you my demonstration. I need to find a higher ranking company. All right, so Danone. Okay, so if we look at the issue of transparency, so for example, Danone scored a 6 in transparency. So if you see at the bottom here, they don't have a make change button. They don't have an infographic that you can generate. So only issues that score below a 5, so for example, Danone on workers scored a 3, allow you to generate an infographic. So this is encouraging companies to get a higher rating and to push their scores up, because what that will do is it will diminish the ability of people to be making noise online about that specific issue. So it's rewarding them for having moved forward in terms of creating sound policy. So the idea is that on an ongoing basis, we can push out these infographics to companies to be able to continue to tell them that these are issues that they need to keep working on and keep making change towards. So if we wanted to go back, this is the scorecard link at the top here links you to the scorecard that we were looking at earlier, which gives an overview and an outline of how all of the companies fare on all of the issues. And there's a little box here at the top that says, how are the scores formed? So if you click on Find Out More, this brings you to the About section, which you can also access through the top of the website. And it gives you an overview of the campaign, of the companies and how they're selected, of the issues and of the indicators that are used in the creation of the scores. But it also allows you to download a guide to understanding the data and the methodology, and to also download the open data sheets, which have all of the information and all of the questions that were posed on the company's policies in order to generate the scores. So by simply clicking on the links here, what it does is it downloads a document for you to be able to open on your computer. And you can see here, this is, for example, there's tabs on the bottom here. This is the section on workers, and it lists all of the companies along the top. And down the left-hand side, there's all of the different questions of all of the indicators that were a part of composing the score. And if you take a look, the references, what they are is that these are the documents and the policies that were used by Oxfam to generate scores on these companies' responses to these issues. So I'll try and get one up here so you can see. So this is the Supplier Code of Conduct from Associated British Foods. So this was part of what Oxfam was using to create the scores around the different issues listed within the scorecard. I'll take a look and close that down. So going back to the Behind the Brands webpage, so again, if you go to Home, this introduces you to the Select a Brand. The About gives you the access to the downloadable documents, the briefing paper, the data sheets. The Brand section, again, brings you to the Selecting of a Brand interface. The Issues tab brings you to the ability to sort your view by an issue as opposed to by a specific company. So this, for example, the Land tab allows you to look at the comparison of all of the different companies and how they're doing on the issue of land. So again, they're listed from highest to lowest always. And so Nestle is scoring the highest, along with Unilever, both which have a score of 3 on the issue of land, moving downwards towards 1, 1, 1, 1. So generally, these companies are faring very poorly on the issue of land rights, and sustainable land use, as well as on the issue of women within their supply chains. So Coca-Cola's got a score of 5, and they have several programs around women's empowerment and working with women in rural areas. And as we move down, Nestle's got a 4, General Mills with a 2, Kellogg's 2, 2 on PepsiCo, Unilever, and Associated British Foods, and Danone, and Mars, all with 1. So if we're looking at a specific issue, let's go back to the issue of land, and we wanted to take action on this issue. You can see at the top of the page a spread the word bar comes up. So this allows you to share this page, so all of this information as an infographic. So what this does is this gives you a condensed listing of all of the companies and all of their scores on this one issue, and generates that into an image that you can share online. So hopefully this has given you a bit of a quick overview as to how to understand and navigate the site. So we'll just hop back to the presentation for a second. So as I was mentioning earlier, there's 2 types of interaction that we're hoping to encourage with this site. One is an ongoing interaction. So where companies are scoring 5 or less on an issue, people can generate a love-hate infographic poster to share via social media. The aim of these actions is to help generate a steady increase of pressure on companies on the issues that we believe that they need to improve their policies on. So this is on an ongoing basis. This will always be available on the website, and we encourage people to continue to share these as long as the policies aren't shifting. And even when they do shift, if they shift a little bit, we need to encourage them to continue to shifting. So the other thing we're doing is encouraging a periodic interaction with the site. So we'll also be running specific targeted actions on specific issues with specific companies to drive shorter-term change. So we'll be asking for specific improvements, but also adding to that buildup of pressure on all of the companies to act across the board on all issues. So the first action that we're asking people to take is to push companies to stop ignoring women in their supply chain. We're looking at women specifically who are working within the chocolate and cocoa production industry. So as a result, we're targeting Mars, Mondelez, and Nestle, who between the three of them buy nearly 1/3 of all of the world's cocoa. So 192,000 pounds of chocolates are consumed every second in the world. Global chocolate sales are over $100 billion a year. But the people who are growing cocoa mostly live below the poverty line, and millions of these producers are women who earn less than men and are largely invisible to the companies that are purchasing the cocoa that they grow. Across the board, as we saw earlier, companies performed poorly in terms of their policies and commitments on women. Many of them don't know how many women are employed through their supply chain, what the working conditions of women workers are, or how they could integrate them into this process. So we'll be starting by targeting the three biggest cocoa players. Because cocoa is a commodity in which a lot of women work, we'll be targeting these companies because they're such big suppliers or such big purchasers of this commodity. So what we're asking these companies to do is we're asking them to look at the way women are treated throughout their supply chains. We're asking them to listen to what women have to say about how they're treated within their supply chains. And we're asking them to act by putting policies in place to protect women's rights and support and nurture women's skills within the supply chain. There's a petition currently live on the Behind the Brands website, and it has over 30 supporters, and we're aiming to reach 40,000 by Easter. So we've got a couple of weeks left, so please go on, take a look at it, share it with your friends, and help us sign up and put your names towards encouraging these three companies, Mars, Mondelez, and Nestle, to take action on creating policies around women within their supply chains. So we'll take a quick look. I'll just hop over so that we can see where on the Behind the Brands website that is. So if you're on the website here, you just click on the very top right-hand corner. There's a Take Action tab. And what that does is that will always be there, and that will pull up the information about the current action that the campaign is focused on. So you can see the three companies listed there at the top, Nestle, Mars, and Mondelez. And there's a little bit of a video outlining the issue of women within the chocolate industry. And then the petition is down here for you to take a look at and sign. So that is how you get access to it online. So in addition to the resources on the Behind the Brands website, Oxfam Canada, has produced a couple of Canadian-specific resources. So what we've done is we've created these resources to link the Behind the Brands campaign to the Canadian context. So there's a document available outlining the connection of each of the 10 big food companies to Canada. So looking at the brands that these companies feature in Canada and what percentage of the Canadian food market share these companies hold. So which of these companies is the most prevalent in our market, and which products should we be looking for that are connected to this campaign? Oxfam Canada has also published 4 case studies of gender inequality within cocoa production. So taking a look at how gender is an important issue within cocoa farming in several countries. So we've looked at Nigeria, Brazil, the Ivory Coast, and Indonesia. So looking specifically at some of the issues that women are dealing with within cocoa production. So this should help to inform some of the issues that we're trying to highlight within the ask for companies to create policies around women within their cocoa supply chains. So far we've already seen movement from companies, which is great. It's been a couple of weeks since this campaign is launched, and many of the companies have already commented on the scorecard and the report released by Oxfam. So this slide here features an outline of Nestle's response to Oxfam's scorecard and report. And also, if we take a look quickly again on the Behind the Brands website, if you go to the top of the page of the campaign news section here, on the far right, allows you to keep ongoing, to follow on an ongoing basis the responses that companies are giving as a result of the different actions that are happening within the campaign. So some of it is responses directly to Oxfam as a result of the report that was released or changes in the scorecard, and some of it is a result of some of the online action, some of the things that were happening in terms of Twitter asks or images that were being shared directly with companies. So a lot of the companies are sensitive to their Twitter accounts because they can see when there's a prevalence of people who are asking for a specific concept or idea or change. So that's a great place to be doing online campaigning. That's a big place that these companies are listening to what their consumers are asking for. So in conclusion, hopefully this gives you a bit of an overview of what the Behind the Brand campaign is about and how you can connect via our web interface to the companies and to the policies that they're working on to, first of all, get a better understanding of how the world's biggest food and beverage companies are interacting with these issues and how their policies are designed on these issues already, but also how you can play a part in encouraging these companies to make change. So far the policies and commitments we found from these companies show that some are doing more than others, but none of them are doing anywhere near enough. They're not paying enough to their workers, they're sourcing and just damaging land and water supplies, and poor communities depend on these resources, and they're frequently ignoring women's rights and needs, while still using pictures of smiling women in their ads to help them with market sales. So they're doing all of this, and they're secretive about where they source their products and from whom. So far, not so good. But the good news is that there's no company that's too big to listen to its customers. And this is where we need the population to come in terms of helping us make this campaign come alive. We know that people around the world think very hard about the food that we purchase, and so we want them to take that a step further in terms of thinking about how they can encourage the companies that produce those products to be even more sustainable in the long term. So hopefully the Behind the Brands website gives you some information to use your power to push for change. As you can see, we've already gotten results from many of these companies. We're very happy with the conversation as it's moving forward so far. And so the more people that come in, the more momentum that we'll have to be able to encourage these companies to make real and active change in terms of how their supply chains are functioning. So thank you so much for joining today. Hopefully this has given you an overview of what Oxfam's Behind the Brand campaign aims to achieve and how you can use our online interface to learn more about these issues, share this information with your friends, and to take action to encourage companies to move their policies forward. Thanks so much.